Okay. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato sama sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato sama sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato sama sambuddhassa. Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu. Okay, so today we will be reading from the Saṁyutta Nikāya, the chapter from the Bojjhanga Saṁyutta. And these are three short suttas that actually are a repetition. So it's the same sutta, and the first time it is addressed to Venerable Mahakassapa, who's one of the senior disciples of the Buddha during his time. And we, on the side, we are also reading about Venerable Maha Moggallana's story. So once we finish with Maha Moggallana, then we will continue with Venerable Mahakassapa's story. So here he is referenced as Venerable Mahakassapa because during that time, there were many other Kassapas as well. So to differentiate from the other Kassapas. And then we will read the exact same sutta, but in a different location. And this time it's addressed to Venerable Maha Moggallana. And then the third one is again the sutta, but addressed to Mahachunda. So these three are also commonly known as recited as Bojjhanga parittas. So in the Theravada tradition, there is a paritta, the chantings. So for example, it's usually start with paying homage to the Buddha, and then taking refuge and then reciting the qualities of the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Sangha, and then some of the common suttas. So a common sutta is like the Metta Sutta, Karaniya Metta Sutta, and then sometimes the Mangala Sutta, and depending on the occasion, different suttas are picked, and then at the end, there will be sharing of merits, and so on and so forth. So sometimes the Bojjhanga parittas are recited to invoke blessings for those who are maybe ill, or even in general for good health in general as well. And I thought to, recite these three as a kind of, how should I say, have a recording of the Bojjhanga's, Satta Bojjhanga's 7 factors of awakening as a reference. So today's reading is not with the intention to explain the 7 factors of awakening, because that has been explained many times by Bhante Vimalaramsi, Venerable Sister Kema, Bhante Dhammagavesi, and a number of the Twin guides as well. So I think the 7 factors of awakening and its meaning and how to practice and reflect on it has been explained in many recordings, and we can always go back and refer to that. The intention really is to have a short recording where ideally when we need to, we have a reference. So it's like a quick reference, like what are the 7 factors again, kind of thing. And sometimes it's probably useful to have it repeated. So I'll read from Bhikkhu Bodhi's translation, these 3 suttas. The only thing is, after consulting some of the twin guides, so I will use, in terms of the translation, so for the second factor, instead of discrimination of states, I will use investigation of mental phenomena. Rapture, I will change it to joy. Concentration to collectedness. So I'll just recite the 3 suttas, one after the other. And of course, there will be repetition. Then after that, I thought of going to reference, again, the 7 factors of awakening, but in 2 of the suttas in the Majjhima Nikāya. One of them, the Satipatthana Sutta, MN10, has a section on it. And MN77 also has a section on it, okay? And then we could have a discussion if there's if the need arises. Okay, so this is from the Bhojjhangasaṁyutta, Connected Discourses on the Factors of Enlightenment or Factors of Awakening. And this is chapter 46, number 14. And here it's just titled Ill, very simple. So on one occasion, the Blessed One was dwelling at Rajagaha in the bamboo grove, the squirrel sanctuary. So you see quite often when we see suttas in Rajagaha, it's either the squirrel sanctuary or Veluvana monastery. So yeah, this is the setting. So I'll start again, sorry. On one occasion, the Blessed One was dwelling at Rajagaha in the bamboo grove, the squirrel sanctuary. Now, on that occasion, the Venerable Mahakassapa was dwelling in the Pipali cave, sick, afflicted, gravely ill. Then in the evening, the Blessed One emerged from seclusion and approached the Venerable Mahakassapa. He sat down in the appointed seat and said to Venerable Mahakassapa, I hope you are bearing up, Kassapa. I hope you are getting better. I hope that your painful feelings are subsiding and not increasing, and that their subsiding, not their increase, is to be discerned. Venerable Sir, I am not bearing up. I am not getting better. Strong painful feelings are increasing in me, not subsiding, and their increase, not their subsiding, is to be discerned. These 7 factors of enlightenment, Kassapa, have been rightly expounded by me. When developed and cultivated, they lead to direct knowledge, to enlightenment, to Nibbana. What 7? The enlightenment factor of mindfulness has been rightly expounded by me. When developed and cultivated, it leads to direct knowledge, to enlightenment, to Nibbana. The enlightenment factor of the investigation on mental phenomena has been rightly expounded by me. When developed and cultivated, it leads to direct knowledge, to enlightenment, to Nibbana. The enlightenment factor of energy has been rightly expounded by me. When developed and cultivated, it leads to direct knowledge, to enlightenment, to Nibbana. The enlightenment factor of joy has been rightly expounded by me. When developed and cultivated, it leads to direct knowledge, to enlightenment, to Nibbana. The enlightenment factor of tranquility has been rightly expounded by me. When developed and cultivated, it leads to direct knowledge, to enlightenment, to Nibbana. The enlightenment factor of collectedness has been rightly expounded by me. When developed and cultivated, it leads to direct knowledge, to enlightenment, to Nibbana. The enlightenment factor of equanimity has been rightly expounded by me. When developed and cultivated, it leads to direct knowledge, to enlightenment, to Nibbana. These 7 factors of enlightenment, Kassapa, have been rightly expounded by me. When developed and cultivated, they lead to direct knowledge, to enlightenment, to Nibbana. Surely, Blessed One, they are factors of enlightenment. Surely, Fortunate One, they are factors of enlightenment. This is what the Blessed One said. Elated, the Venerable Mahakassapa delighted in the Blessed One's statement, and the Venerable Mahakassapa recovered from that illness. In such a way, the Venerable Mahakassapa was cured of his illness. Okay, in the next sutta, number 15. So we will read it now. On one occasion, the Blessed One was dwelling at Rajagara in the bamboo grove, the squirrel sanctuary. Now, on that occasion, the Venerable Maha Moggallana was dwelling on Mount Vulture's Peak, sick, afflicted, gravely ill. Then in the evening, the Blessed One emerged from seclusion and approached the Venerable Maha Moggallana. He sat down in the appointed seat and said to the Venerable Maha Moggallana, I hope you are bearing up, Maha Moggallana. I hope you are getting better. I hope that your painful feelings are subsiding and not increasing, and that their subsiding, not their increase, is to be discerned. Venerable Sir, I am not bearing up. I am not getting better. Strong, painful feelings are increasing in me, not subsiding, and their increase, not their subsiding, is to be discerned. These 7 factors of enlightenment, Maha Moggallana, have been rightly expounded by me. When developed and cultivated, they lead to direct knowledge, to enlightenment, to Nibbana. What 7? The enlightenment factor of mindfulness has been rightly expounded by me. When developed and cultivated, it leads to direct knowledge, to enlightenment, to Nibbana. The enlightenment factor of the investigation of mental phenomena has been rightly expounded by me. When developed and cultivated, it leads to direct knowledge, to enlightenment, to Nibbana. The enlightenment factor of energy has been rightly expounded by me. When developed and cultivated, it leads to direct knowledge, to enlightenment, to Nibbana. The enlightenment factor of joy has been rightly expounded by me. When developed and cultivated, it leads to direct knowledge, to enlightenment, to Nibbana. The enlightenment factor of tranquility has been rightly expounded by me. When developed and cultivated, it leads to direct knowledge, to enlightenment, to Nibbana. The enlightenment factor of collectedness has been rightly expounded by me. When developed and cultivated, it leads to direct knowledge, to enlightenment, to Nibbana. The enlightenment factor of equanimity has been rightly expounded by me. When developed and cultivated, it leads to direct knowledge, to enlightenment, to Nibbana. These 7 factors of enlightenment, Maha Moggallana, have been rightly expounded by me. When developed and cultivated, they lead to direct knowledge, to enlightenment, to Nibbana. Surely, Blessed One, they are factors of enlightenment. Surely, Fortunate One, they are factors of enlightenment. This is what the Blessed One said. Elated, Venerable Maha Moggallana delighted in the Blessed One's statement, and the Venerable Maha Moggallana recovered from that illness. In such a way, the Venerable Maha Moggallana was cured of his illness. Okay. Now the third one is addressed to Venerable Mahachunda. The sutta number 16. On one occasion, the Blessed One was dwelling at Bojjhaṅga in the bamboo grove, the squirrel sanctuary. Now this, just before I continue, this one is a little bit different because this time the Buddha is the one that is ill. And Venerable Mahachunda then was visiting the Buddha, and then the Buddha requested Venerable Mahachunda to recite the factors of enlightenment. So it's a slightly different, but again, repeated in the same way. So let's repeat again. On one occasion, the Blessed One was dwelling at Bojjhaṅga in the bamboo grove, the squirrel sanctuary. Now, on that occasion, the Blessed One was sick, afflicted, gravely ill. Then the Venerable Mahachunda approached the Blessed One, paid homage to him, and sat down to one side. The Blessed One then said to the Venerable Mahachunda, recite the factors of enlightenment, Chunda. These 7 factors of enlightenment, Venerable Sir, have been rightly expounded by the Blessed One. When developed and cultivated, they lead to direct knowledge, to enlightenment, to Nibbana. What 7? The enlightenment factor of mindfulness has been rightly expounded by the Blessed One. When developed and cultivated, it leads to direct knowledge, to enlightenment, to Nibbana. The enlightenment factor of the investigation of mental phenomena has been rightly expounded by the Blessed One. When developed and cultivated, it leads to direct knowledge, to enlightenment, to Nibbana. The enlightenment factor of energy has been rightly expounded by the Blessed One. When developed and cultivated, it leads to direct knowledge, to enlightenment, to Nibbana. The enlightenment factor of joy has been rightly expounded by the Blessed One. When developed and cultivated, it leads to direct knowledge, to enlightenment, to Nibbana. The enlightenment factor of tranquility has been rightly expounded by the Blessed One. When developed and cultivated, it leads to direct knowledge, to enlightenment, to Nibbana. The enlightenment factor of collectedness has been rightly expounded by the Blessed One. When developed and cultivated, it leads to direct knowledge, to enlightenment, to Nibbana. The enlightenment factor of equanimity has been rightly expounded by the Blessed One. When developed and cultivated, it leads to direct knowledge, to enlightenment, to Nibbana. These 7 factors of enlightenment, Venerable Sir, have been rightly expounded by the Blessed One. When developed and cultivated, they lead to direct knowledge, to enlightenment, to Nibbana. Surely, Chunda, they are factors of enlightenment. Surely, Chunda, they are factors of enlightenment. This is what the Venerable Mahachunda said, and the teacher approved, and the Blessed One recovered from that illness. In such a way, the Blessed One was cured of his illness. Okay, so I'm just going to pause here a short while before I go on to reference the Majjhima Nikāya. Does anyone have any thoughts or comments about the 3 short suttas we just read? Some of them are the opposites on the hindrances. Yes, indeed. Energy versus love, correct. Thank you, Pai. Yes, indeed. In fact, for the chapter on Bhojjhangasaṁyutta, joy versus aversion, correct. Yes. So absolutely. And I'm not intending to cover it today, but you're absolutely right. And also, a number of times the earlier sutras, not earlier sutras, sutta number, also in the same chapter, Bojjhanga Saṁyutta. It's been covered before a number of times. Venerable Sister Kema, Bhante Dhammagavesi, and a couple of other twin guides, vaguely off my memory, Hugh Polton as well, on the hindrances. So in particular, the nutriment to the hindrances and how to denourish the nutriment to the hindrances. So sutta number 51, same chapter. Those of you who have Bhikkhu Bodhi's translation in the book, it's page 1597, on the nutriments for enlightenment factors, then the denourishment of hindrances and the denourishment of enlightenment factors. So that also has been covered before. And also the sutta right after that, number 53, fire, which talks about how to overcome the hindrances as well. So yes, you're right. So there's a direct connection between the Bojjhangas and the hindrances, and it is covered in the Bhojjhangasaṁyutta, especially from number 51 onwards, 51 and 52 and 53 and 54, accompanied by loving kindness. So I won't go there because it's been read before, so I'm sure there's a recording somewhere. Does everyone know how to use the search in the YouTube channel to help yourself? I hope so. That's usually what I do. That's the fastest way to use the search tool, because there's a lot of recordings already built up over time. So I use the search tool in the YouTube channel itself to find if there's already a recording of it. But yes, I'm glad you had that insight. So very good. Okay, so if there are no further, if there's no questions or further comments, I thought to go to, again, this topic on the 7 factors of enlightenment. So the reason why I thought it was a nice idea to read these factors from the Bojjhangasaṁyutta was when I was recently ill, and in my sitting, just by suddenly remembering to reflect on the 7 factors, by the end of the sitting, I felt a little bit better. And it was just simply just remembering what the 7 factors are. I didn't even go into actual reflection in full detail. Because sometimes when we are not feeling well, it's quite difficult. But yeah, whatever, even just bringing to mind what the 7 factors are can sometimes be helpful when we are not feeling too good. So yeah, so I hope the reading earlier would come in handy one day when we are not feeling so well. So now I thought of going to the Majjhima Nikāya, and it is covered in the Majjhima Nikāya number 10, the Satipatthana Sutta. Now I won't read the full sutta because that's been covered before as well. So there is definitely a recording. The Satipatthana Sutta is very interesting because although the title is called the Foundations of Mindfulness, there's actually a lot covered in there. including the hindrances and the 5 aggregates and 6 bases. So I thought to just read verse 42, which is again on the 7 factors of enlightenment. Again mentioned, but here it's more in terms of a contemplating on them. Okay. So this is verse 42 or paragraph 42 from Majjhima Nikāya number 10. Again, students, a student abides contemplating mind objects as mind objects in terms of the 7 enlightenment factors. And how does a student abide contemplating mind objects as mind objects in terms of the 7 enlightenment factors? Here, there being the mindfulness enlightenment factor. In him, a student understands there is the mindfulness enlightenment factor in me. Or there being no mindfulness enlightenment factor in him, he understands there is no mindfulness enlightenment factor in me. And he also understands how they come to be the arising of the unarisen mindfulness enlightenment factor. And how the arisen mindfulness enlightenment factor comes to fulfillment by development. There being the investigation of mental phenomena enlightenment factor in him, a student understands there is the investigation of mental phenomena enlightenment factor in me. Or there being no investigation of mental phenomena enlightenment factor in him, he understands there is no investigation of mental phenomena enlightenment factor in me. And he also understands how there comes to be the arising of the unarisen investigation of mental phenomena enlightenment factor, and how the arisen investigation of mental phenomena enlightenment factor comes to fulfillment by development. There being the energy enlightenment factor in him, a student understands there is the energy enlightenment factor in me. Or there being no energy enlightenment factor in him, he understands there is no energy enlightenment factor in me. And he also understands how there comes to be the arising of the unarisen energy enlightenment factor, and how the arisen energy enlightenment factor comes to fulfillment by development. There being the joy enlightenment factor in him, a student understands there is the joy enlightenment factor in me. Or there being no joy enlightenment factor in him, he understands there is no joy enlightenment factor in me. And he also understands how there comes to be the arising of the unarisen joy enlightenment factor, and how the arisen joy enlightenment factor comes to fulfillment by development. There being the tranquility enlightenment factor in him, a student understands there is the tranquility enlightenment factor in me. Or there being no tranquility enlightenment factor in him, he understands there is no tranquility enlightenment factor in me. And he also understands how there comes to be the arising of the unarisen tranquility and enlightenment factor, and how the arisen tranquility enlightenment factor comes to fulfillment by development. There being the collectedness enlightenment factor in him, a student understands there is the collectedness enlightenment factor in me, or there being no collectedness enlightenment factor in him, he understands there is no collectedness enlightenment factor in me. And he also understands how there comes to be the arising of the unarisen collectedness enlightenment factor, and how the arisen collectedness enlightenment factor comes to fulfillment by development. There being the equanimity enlightenment factor in him, a bhikkhu understands there is the equanimity enlightenment factor in me, or there being no equanimity enlightenment factor in him, he understands there is no equanimity enlightenment factor in me. And he also understands how there comes to be the arising of the unarisen equanimity enlightenment factor, and how the arisen equanimity enlightenment factor comes to fulfillment by development. In this way, he abides contemplating mind objects as mind objects, internally, externally, and both internally and externally. And he abides independent, not clinging to anything in the world. And that is how a bhikkhu abides contemplating mind objects as mind objects in terms of the 7 enlightenment factors. So this was the paragraph in the Satipatthana Sutta towards the end, where it talks about how to abide contemplating 4 foundation, which is contemplating mind objects as mind objects. So the key word here, just as before, previously when Bhante Vimalaramsi explained the Satipatthana, in the beginning part of the Satipatthana, when it talks about the mindfulness of the breathing and mindfulness of the body and full awareness, the key, or even if we just look at paragraph number 4 in the suttas, where it talks about the mindfulness of breathing, the key word here, as Bhante Vimalaramsi used to explain, is the word understand. So in paragraph 4, if I just read very quickly, ever mindful, he breathes in, mindful, he breathes out, breathing in long, he understands. I breathe in long. Or breathing out long, he understands. I breathe out long. So the key word here is understand. And again, when we read the paragraph on the 7 factors of enlightenment, similarly, the key word is when we are practicing or in our meditation, we understand if, let's say, the enlightenment factor of energy, has it a reason? Has it not a reason? Yes, it's a reason in me, or it hasn't a reason in me. And if it has, then we can also see how that comes to be. How does it arise? And if it has a reason, then how can it develop further into fulfillment? So I thought that was useful as a reference. And then now to go briefly to Majjhima Nikāya number 77. Again, I won't read the full sutta because it has been read before and described before as well. So I'm not trying to duplicate tasks here, but what I thought was interesting was in reference to, so here the 7 factors of enlightenment are mentioned in paragraph 20. So this Majjhima Nikāya number 77, Maha Sakuludāyi Sutta, the Greater Discourse to Sakuludāyin. I thought this was an interesting sutta. I actually like this sutta because this sutta, very similar to the other more popular suttas, cover each of the 37 what do you call it? The 37 factors? Is factor the right word? So basically in this particular sutta,
requisites of
37,
awakening.
yes, of awakening. Thank you, Madam Nan. 37 requisites of awakening. So it covers it all, starting from 4 noble truths, 4 foundations of mindfulness, 4 right kinds of striving. And when we get the 4 right kinds of striving into automation, then it becomes the basis for spiritual powers, the 5 faculties, which again, when it gets into automation, develops into the 5 powers, the 7 factors of an awakening or enlightenment, the Noble Eightfold Path, the 8 liberations, the 8 bases for transcendence. So it's a very, and then it talks about the 4 jhanas as well. So it's a very huge coverage, this particular sutta. So I won't read through the whole sutta, but I thought to give a little bit of a setting just as a refresher how this sutta came to be. So what happened was the Buddha was residing in Rajagaha, the squirrel sanctuary, which is the same place where we read earlier. And then he was going to go out for alms, but then he thought it's too early to go into the village. So he decided to go to the wanderer, Sakuludāyin. The name of the person this discourse is named after, in the peacock sanctuary, the wanderer's path. Now, when he went there, it so happened there were already a large gathering, a large assembly of other wanderers and other teachers. And so at that time, it was common to have a lot of these different sects, different wanderers, different teachers, and they would come together and debate. And he walked into such a discussion. And because there was a lot of people and they were all talking to each other and debating, it was quite noisy. Now then, the wanderer Sakuludāyin saw the Buddha coming, and then he said to everyone, "Sirs, be quiet, sirs, make no noise. Here comes the recluse Gotama. This venerable one likes quiet and commends quiet. Perhaps if he finds our assembly a quiet one, he will think to join us." So Sakuludāyin was actually eager to meet the Buddha and invite the Buddha in. So he actually asked everyone, "Shh, keep quiet, okay?" So then the Buddha came, sat down, and the same thing. Sakuludāyin also sat down on one side, okay? Then the Buddha asked Sakuludāyin, "What's all the noise about? What are you all discussing, right?" So in short, just to skip all these things, and you can read it on your own, Sakuludāyin said, "Oh, okay. Actually, what happened was we were all discussing about there's so many different groups and so many different teachers, and all the names of the teachers came out. And there was this question of amongst all these saints and teachers who are who amongst them is honored, respected, revered, and venerated by his disciples? And how, honoring and respecting him, do they live in dependence on him? And then it goes on and says, so and so actually isn't very respected, isn't very honored by his students, blah, blah, blah. And it goes through one by one. And then it comes to say, oh, but the recluse Gotama is honored, revered, respected, and venerated by his disciples, and his disciples live in dependence on him. So then Sakuludāyin was very curious and he said, okay, let us hear from you what you have to teach, right? Because you are revered, respected, honored by your disciples, etc. But then the Buddha said, but Udāyin, how many qualities do you see in me, because of which my disciples honor, respect, revere, and venerate me, and live in dependence on me, honoring and respecting me? So the Buddha is asking Sakuludāyin or Udāyin, what do you think? What do I demonstrate? What sort of qualities, what sort of virtues do I have that my students honor and respect me such compared to all these other teachers that are here? Then Udāyin said, Venerable Sir, I see 5 qualities in the Buddha, in the Blessed One, because of which his disciples honor, respect, revere, and venerate him, and live in dependence on him, honoring and respecting him. What are the 5? So then he goes on to say, well, I think, this is what I think, these are the 5 qualities. Number 1, the Buddha eats little. He doesn't eat a lot. He doesn't ask for a lot of food. Number 2, eats little. He is contented with any kind of robe. That's the second quality. This is what Udāyin thinks. Number 3, or the Buddha is contented with any kind of alms food. And number 4, the Buddha is contented with any kind of resting place. And number 5, the Buddha is secluded and commends seclusion. Okay, so then the Buddha tried to counter that and say, oh, if you say these are the 5 qualities that determine why my students honor and revere me, then I ask you this. So the first one you say, okay, I eat little, I commend eating little. But then some of my students, the Buddha says, some of my students, they live on maybe a cupful or half cupful of food, or bilva fruit, maybe it's a type of fruit, or half a bilva fruit quantity of food. But sometimes I eat the full contents of my alms bowl. So what do you think? If my students honor and revere me based on this quality, isn't it a little bit odd? Because sometimes they eat a lot less than me. Then the Buddha said, oh, if you say it's based on the second quality, which is contented with any kind of robe, then the Buddha said, but some of my students, they are refuse rag wearers. That means refuse rags, so rags or cloth that people throw away, or wearers of coarse robes, or they collect rags from the charnel ground. So the charnel ground is where dead people who passed away, and then they put it at a place where it's kind of like a waiting area before actual cremation. And sometimes if I think if I remember from previous Dharma talk, this was back in the days, if the family cannot afford a cremation, and it's just left there to rot. So some of these wanderers, these students, what the Buddha is saying is they go to the charnel ground to collect the cloth that was used to wrap the dead bodies that have been decomposed, right? Or rubbish heaps, and make them into patch robes and wear them. So then the Buddha said, but sometimes I wear robes that, the householders give me. And he said, robes so fine that pumpkin hair is coarse in comparison. So basically very high quality robes. So then the Buddha is trying to counter Udayin and say, if you say that's the quality that my students revere me, that's a bit odd because the robes I wear are a lot better than them. And then the third quality is like, oh, contented with any kind of alms food. The Buddha said, well, some of my students, they sometimes when they go on alms food, when they have entered among the houses, sometimes they will not consent even when invited to sitting down. They are very humble. If they have enough food already, even if someone invites them, they don't eat much more. And they don't want to intrude. And then the Buddha said, but sometimes I eat on invitation of choice rice, probably very good rice, and many sauces and curries. So how would that make sense? And then on the quality of Udayin, who says, oh, the Buddha is contented with any kind of resting place, then the Buddha said, well, I have students who, they are tree root dwellers, open air dwellers, do not even use roof for 8 months of the year. And then the Buddha said, while I sometimes live in gable mansions plastered within and without, protected against the wind, secured by door bolts with shuttered windows. And then the Buddha is saying, in comparison, how would it make sense if such students still honor and respect me? So then the Buddha explained, however, Udayin, there are 5 other qualities because of which my disciples honor, respect, revere, and venerate me and live in dependence on me, honoring and respecting me. And what are the 5? So then he explains, I won't read the full sutta, but the first one is that the recluse Gotama is virtuous. He possesses the supreme aggregate of virtue. Virtue meaning the sila, keeping the precepts. Then the second value, second quality, is when the recluse Gotama says, I know, he truly knows. When he says, I see, he truly sees. So this is the knowledge and the vision part. And so the recluse Gotama teaches the Dhamma through direct knowledge. And he teaches the Dhamma with a sound basis. And that is the second quality. Then the Buddha said the third quality is the recluse Gotama is wise. He possesses the supreme aggregate of wisdom. It is impossible that he should not foresee the implications of an assertion, or that he should not be able to confute with reasons the current doctrines of others. That means he has this broad wisdom that he can foresee. If someone were to debate with him, he can already foresee how to answer them. He has that kind of wisdom. And then he said, when my disciples have met with suffering and become victims of suffering, they come and ask me about the noble truth of suffering. I explain to them the noble truth of suffering, and I satisfy their minds with my explanation. And then the sutta repeats on the student asking about the noble truth of the origin of suffering, the cessation of suffering, and the path leading to the cessation of suffering. And that, the Buddha said, is the fourth quality why his students honor and revere him. Then the fifth quality is expounded at length and covers the teachings, which are the four foundations of mindfulness, the four kinds of striving, the four bases of spiritual power, the five faculties, basically the 37 requisites the Buddha explained because he has proclaimed and expounded them. That's the reason why his students honor and revere him. So the four bases for spiritual power, the five faculties, the five powers. And then I'll just read very briefly paragraph 20 on the 7 factors of enlightenment. Again, Udayin, I have proclaimed to my disciples the way to develop the 7 enlightenment factors. Here, a student develops the mindfulness enlightenment factor, which is supported by seclusion, dispassion, and cessation, and results in relinquishment. He develops the investigation of mental phenomena enlightenment factor, which is supported by seclusion, dispassion, and cessation, and results in relinquishment. He develops the energy enlightenment factor, which is supported by seclusion, dispassion, and cessation, and results in relinquishment. He develops the joy enlightenment factor, which is supported by seclusion, dispassion, and cessation, and results in relinquishment. He develops the tranquility enlightenment factor, which is supported by seclusion, dispassion, and cessation, and results in relinquishment. He develops the collectedness enlightenment factor, which is supported by seclusion, dispassion, and cessation, and results in relinquishment. He develops the equanimity enlightenment factor, which is supported by seclusion, dispassion, and cessation, and results in relinquishment. And thereby, many disciples of mine abide, having reached the consummation and perfection of direct knowledge. Then the sutta goes on to explain the Noble Eightfold Path, the 8 liberations, the 8 bases for transcendence, the 10 kasinas, the 4 jhanas, insight knowledge, the mind-made bodies, the kinds of supernormal power, the divine ear element, the understanding the minds of others, recollection of past lives. These are all fall under the 5 qualities. But the last paragraph is probably a sum of everything. And so I like the last paragraph, how it ended this chat, this discourse with Udayin. I thought it was really a nice way to finish off that discussion. So the last paragraph here is the destruction of the taints. Again, Udayin, I have proclaimed to my disciples the way whereby, by realizing for themselves with direct knowledge, they here and now enter upon and abide in the deliverance of mind and deliverance by wisdom that are taintless with the destruction of the things. Just as if there were a lake in a mountain recess, clear, limpid, and undisturbed, so that a man with good sight, standing on the bank, could see shells, gravel, and pebbles, and also shoals of fish swimming about and resting. You might think, there is this lake, clear, limpid, and undisturbed. And there are these shells, gravel, and pebbles, and also these shoals of fish swimming about and resting. So too, I have proclaimed to my disciples the way whereby, by realizing for themselves with direct knowledge, they here and now enter upon and abide in the deliverance of mind and deliverance by wisdom that are taintless with the destruction of the taints. And thereby, many disciples of mine abide, having reached the consummation and perfection of direct knowledge. This Udāyin is the fifth quality, because of which my disciples honor, respect, revere, and venerate me, and live in dependence on me, honoring and respecting me. These Udāyin are the five qualities because of which my disciples honor, respect, revere, and venerate me, and live in dependence on me, honoring and respecting me. That is what the Blessed One said. The wanderer Udāyin was satisfied and delighted in the Blessed One's words. So this is not a short sutta, but it covers a lot, number 77. And I think it's been covered before in one of the previous sessions as well. Just do a search if you're interested. But I thought I'd pick this one up very briefly, just because the setting was also interesting, because it was came from a discussion where other teachers, other wanderers from other sects were there as well. Okay. Anyone has any thoughts or comments? Feel free. Was that useful to everyone? It was a fair amount of repetition, but I thought it was interesting to read with repetition sometimes. I don't know if it was useful. Yes. So I hope that today's recording can be used as a reference. Sometimes when we just need a quick reference as a reminder what the 7 factors are. Of course, if you already have them deep in your mind, then that's great. And just as we discussed in the earlier part of today's reading, it could come in handy when we are particularly not feeling well. So when the body or even the mind is not feeling well, then recollect, call to mind, of course, use 6 R's, and then call to mind, recollect the 7 factors of enlightenment, and hopefully, the 7 factors of awakening, and hopefully that can then help us get back into balance and overcome that discomfort. Okay. So if there are no further questions, comments, or any form of sharing, etc., we can share merits. So let me just share. Okay, so let's share merits together. May suffering ones be suffering free, and the fear struck fearless be. May the grieving shed all grief, and may all beings find relief. May all beings share this merit that we have thus acquired for the acquisition of all kinds of happiness. May beings inhabiting space and earth, devas and nagas of mighty power, share this merit of ours. May they long protect the Buddha's dispensation. Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu. Okay, great. Yep, I'm glad that it's useful, and that's the whole intention. And we as human beings at some point or another will fall ill, whether we like it or not. And that's just the nature of this body and mind. So yeah, I hope this recording will be useful when that happens. And I wish you all a very good, happy, healthy, peaceful coming week. And we'll come back again next week. Take care. Bye bye.